Hello, everybody out there in internet land. Welcome to Activating Bravery. It's a free webinar series. This is the first of 6. I wanted to make sure I welcomed you to this Zoom and just give you a couple of reminders or tips. If you've never been on Zoom before, you want to be able to use the chat if you're available at a computer or even on your phone. Make sure you put, when you open the chat, the little blue button, put it on all panelists and attendees. That way we can see what you are writing to each other. Everybody can see. If you just want to communicate with me and my team, you can put in the private Q&A. That's private, so you can go ahead and just get adjusted for that. While you are toggling to all panelists and attendees, go ahead and tell me who you are, where you're from. Maybe even if you wanted to say why you're interested in this subject matter. What happened to my confidence? I can say, as we just are welcoming people into the room right now, the Zoom room, that I've been out on the road for the last week talking to so many adult women about this drop that we're going to be discussing in confidence and a very long and slow recovery we have starting at the age of 22. I've been around a lot of corporate women as we bring our brave stuff into the space with women because we feel so strongly about all the tools that we've been able to develop, all the methodologies and the programming that help women to start to see surges in their recovery of confidence and bravery, and how important this whole concept of confidence is. It's almost like we wake up one day and we look around and we're like, where did it go? Where did my confidence go? And so I want to be talking about that today. I think we're sitting on a lot of data in our own research that allows us to be able to say to people, we have a lot of really helpful tips, and you cannot unknow this information once you hear it. So welcome. Hi, Tracy from Kansas City. Hi, Chazzy from NYC. Again, a reminder for those of you who just joined, put on all panelists and attendees and we can see where you're coming from. Don't feel pressure like you have to chat. This is going to be somewhat interactive in that I would love to get your feedback. Anytime you love what I'm saying, you agree with what I'm saying, you are like, having an aha moment, go ahead and press boom. I find it's very easy, all caps, so fun, boom, 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 boom. And if you want to challenge me on anything, definitely get in there. Part of bravery, I think, is popping in and saying when you agree or you disagree. And or if you have any questions, please let me know. My team is on hand, ready to make sure we are answering questions as we speak. This is going to be a 30-minute webinar, a couple of surprises for you the last 5 minutes, of course. So without further ado, I want to get into this. I want to say hello from Brooklyn. Hello from North Carolina. Hello, Joanna. Or Joanne, I'm sorry. No, Joanna from Ohio. And Erica from Oberlin. Katie from Maryland. Holly from North Carolina. Here we go. So I was a lacrosse coach. I was a lacrosse coach to thousands of teenage girls who wanted to play lacrosse in college, but who felt that they didn't have access to resources or tools in order to get the recruiting spots that they wanted in college. They were playing in non-traditional lacrosse playing areas, and it was critical for me to help them level the playing field. I came from a really hotbed of lacrosse. I feel like I had all the access to resources and tools, and I wanted to make sure we were equipping kids who didn't have high school teams sometimes. They didn't have coaches who knew a ton about the game or were well connected, and that matters in the recruiting world. But I realized really early on that we weren't going to just be focusing on making them better at lacrosse in order to level the playing field, that we were going to have to use the resources they had inside in order to get them to be competitive with girls who'd be playing, 52 weeks a year. The kids from Maryland had a higher lacrosse IQ. So in order to level that playing field, we were teaching them stuff from the inside out. And what I started to realize is as they grew into high school and middle school, they started to change a little bit. They started to become just so much less confident, less willing to pop up, less eager to try hard things, less willing to throw themselves out there, more internal. They ruminated far more. They were overthinking. They were in their heads. They were absolutely and totally going out of their mind inside. And all of that transferred to what they would say is, I just don't feel confident. But when I'd ask them what they want, the number one thing they wanted was confidence. And so we started to play around for a really long time with what is this idea of confidence? What is the difference between self-esteem and self-worth? Why is what they want so hard for them to go after? And why does what we think they need in order to get it require something they're not willing to give? It was a massive conundrum. And I wondered, are my kids just the ones dealing with this? Or are all kids dealing with this? Are just girl lacrosse players dealing with this? Or are boys who don't even play sports dealing with this? Is this a kid issue or is this a girl issue? Is this a boy issue or is this like an athlete issue? I don't know. So I sought out to find some bigger evidence that this problem existed rather than just my observational anecdotal data. And a woman I work with now, Katie Carroll, she's our research analyst at Brave. She found this graph and she's like, I know this isn't confidence, but it is self-esteem. And so let's look at this in terms of what's happening, Chris. I think this is like getting at part of our frustration as coaches. And it does a really good job of explaining what is happening in these teenage years. And I know that there are 4 things happening, but what I want to say, I'll explain the graph a little bit. The top line are men as exposed by triangles, bottom line, women represented by circles, and the square line in between is the average of the 2. So I don't know if you guys want to check this out for just a little bit, but there are a couple things happening and they're all relevant for our conversation today about what happened to my confidence. First, you can see that all people, men and women and anybody who identifies in between, drop between the ages of 9 and 22. We see this massive drop. We see men, even though they drop just like, or boys, even though they drop just like girls, they track higher for their entire lifetime as it relates to self-esteem. And the long and slow recovery for both men and women is long and slow between the ages of 22 and 65. And you can see that women never quite recover to where they were when they began, though men get back to it. So by the time we're at 65, men are where they felt like when they were 8 years old, but women are not quite where they felt like when they were 8 years old. Now, this is really fascinating because it really helped me contextualize what I was feeling on the front lines working with kids as a teacher, as a coach. So everybody's dropping. Girls are dropping worse than boys, and everyone has a long and slow recovery, but women don't quite recover fully the way men do. That's the situation. I did not know this. And though this told me a lot about the girls I was working with, it told me a lot about the future that I had in store. At the time I found this out, I was probably 35 years old. And so I was like, well, I'm now 13 years into my recovery and I still have another 30 years to go. Is this going to feel this way the whole time? Now, I'll just dive into our Brave data so I can show you what we've done. What we've done is we've recreated that self-esteem data, but we've done it through the lens of bravery and confidence. And what we ask people is on a pre-survey, how brave do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most brave? And how confident do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident? And what you see is right here, because we were talking about it before, 9 to 22 years old, you see the same thing that's happening for boys as happening for girls. Bravery and confidence both go down dramatically between the ages of 9 and 22. And at least for what we've shown here for this particular conversation, that women have a long and slow recovery ahead. Now, the biggest thing I want to explain here in terms of our data and findings, what makes this relevant is we did not know that bravery and confidence would correlate when we started doing this work with over 5,000 people, over 4,000 women 4 years ago. We just knew that these were 2 things we wanted to figure out. And what we now have is a really strong correlation. You can see with both boys and girls and women that bravery and confidence is correlated. And what we mean by that is when somebody feels more brave, they also feel more confident. When someone feels less confident, they also feel less brave. This gave us the idea that to get the thing everybody wants, we can use bravery as a lever, especially with the programming that we designed in order to get that. It made confidence so much less big, so much less dramatic, so much less hard to get. It felt like we finally had a string to pull and say, I want that confidence, and here's how I can get it. And that is a key to our programming. Now, I want to get really clear that there are differences between boys and girls during this drop. So let's zoom in here so you can see we're not just talking about a bunch of boys and a bunch of girls and throwing them into our data set and having it pop out and be like, boys track higher than girls. Not only do boys track higher than girls, but when we look and we zoom into 3 scenarios where we dealt with 7th grade boys and girls at the same school, 10th grade boys and girls at the same school, college age men and women at the same school playing the same sport at the same Division I level, we want to show you the differences of what's happening. And what is specific here is 2 things. One, you see the boys tracking higher than the girls. Here's a 7th grade class in Brooklyn, New York. Here's a 10th grade class in Maryland. And here is college Division I teams also in New York. You see that the boys are tracking higher than girls and that everybody is going down during this time. Of course, you also see that bravery and confidence correlated, but that is no longer a surprise to us. It is always still really unsettling to see how far girls are below boys at these foundational ages and that it persists. Now, what then are the differences between bravery and confidence? Krista, like if they're not the same thing, what are you talking about? How do we look at bravery as a lever to confidence? Let's really clearly define them. And we are rogue here at Brave Enterprises. We're heavily rooted in data and the existing science that's out there. We like to help activate science so that people feel the experiences of the positive experiences of the different skill sets or strengths. And namely, we look through the lens of bravery. But our definition of bravery, which we use interchangeably with the word courage. So for us, courage is bravery, is courage, is bravery, is bravery, is courage, is bravery, is courage. Cool? Boom? Yes? Awesome. We say this is taking action in the face of fear. Anytime you are outside of your comfort zone, you are being brave. Anytime you're doing something that makes you feel uncomfortable, you are being brave. Anytime you're doing something that feels uncertain, you are being brave. Now, sort of the scientific definition of this when we first started Brave Enterprises was persistence and perseverance despite having fear. This came from the fathers of positive psychology. Sort of late in the 80s, we're defining these 24 different character strengths. Bravery was both, or courage was both one of those 24 character strengths, and it was a category of strengths. It's a cherished and treasured virtue, and a lot of our preliminary work when we were starting this company came from the whole concept of courage as a spectrum, sort of established by Aristotle. We will not get into that now, but if bravery is taking action in the face of fear, and if you're signed up for all webinars, then you're going to hear a lot about bravery ongoing. But when we talk about what happened to my confidence, really want to get into this concept of what is confidence. And we define this as the belief in your ability and or your experience. The belief in your ability and or your experience. I have to say that a bazillion times over again because I have to remember that this is where then I am going to get my confidence from. I'm going to understand what it is I'm working with. And to make it a little bit more like drop into it, and we'll use this as an example in an exercise in a little bit, confidence is what you've been through. It's what you've been through. What you've been through. Now, something different happens between boys and girls that we need to mention, because up until this point, I've shared with you our data on the fact that everybody drops in self-esteem, and now through our data and research, confidence and bravery. Boys track higher than girls, but everybody has a long and slow recovery from the ages of 22 to 65. Boys rebound, right? So they're back at their same level when they were 8, women not quite. So right now, everybody is sort of experiencing the same thing. And if you know about our work, you know that we think the reason why this is happening is of something called the fear inflection point. We will not go into that today, but I can tell you that something very dramatically different started to happen in our data when we started to look into what are people afraid of. That's the fear inflection point. But when we ask them, not just how confident do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, we ask them, do you feel more confident than your peers, as confident than your peers, or less confident than your peers? Frankly, we were just curious at first. We were literally just curious. And this ended up becoming such a major data point that triggers a whole bunch of other things. And for those of you who are on this call right now, I would love to hear whether or not you feel if you are more confident than your peers, as confident than your peers, or less confident than your peers. And to be specific for any sciencey people out there, you are going to establish your peer group. So your peer group could be other women of your same age, other women in your same industry of your same age, if you so choose. It could be men and women of your same age. That is up to you. We offer this, ask the standard question. So are you more confident than your peers, as confident your peers, or less confident than your peers? And I just am going to pause. If you have the opportunity to answer, it's great and it's brave, by the way, to answer and put this in a public setting, particularly if you have one of those answers that's as or less. And I'm going to give you the data on something that is shocking. So I see nobody is, here we go. So as confident than your peers, great. I love that for you. So here is more. I love that for you. So here is what we see on the data in middle school and for boys and for girls. So girls are at about 9% would say they are less confident than their peers. So this graph is only showing you the percentage of people who report being less confident than their peers, feeling less confident than their peers. So girls and boys in middle school are about the same at around 10%. We've shown you these boys numbers as they creep through high school, then to young adulthood, then to adulthood. Right? These numbers across the board stay about the same. This is not true for girls. In high school, we make a massive jump. And by the way, these numbers are on the rise. These are our most recent statistics. In high school, girls classify themselves, 20% of girls would say they are less confident than their peers. That is a double than it was just a few years earlier. That's 1 out of 5 girls in high school would say I'm less confident than my peers. 1 out of 4 girls between the ages of 18 and 22 would classify herself as less confident than her peers. That's 1 out of every 4 women. And our adult average is 21% of women would say they're less confident than their peers. Now, of course, we don't want to make that just like out there in the nowhere land. We want to really drill it in and make it so that you feel and understand this is not just every woman but us, or I'm not the only woman. We were in New York at a tech company, and 23% of their women felt less confident than their peers. At a big fancy tech company. We were in Raleigh with an amalgamation of women from all over the area. 35%, that's more than 1 in 3, would say they were less confident than their peers. This is such an alarming statistic for us, and it means as these numbers started to grow, we decided we would need to expand our business. We would need to make sure that we were servicing people from pre-K to gray, that we would make sure we were bringing our programming everywhere we possibly could so that we could start affecting this surge or this long and slow recovery, and particularly this number. Why? Because this number indicates bravery and confidence scores. We went before, right? Men and women like this. Bravery and confidence scores for anybody who says they're less confident than their peers are significantly lower, both of them, than people in that same age group and even in that same group. So for the women in Raleigh, the 35% of women in Raleigh who classified themselves as less confident than their peers, their bravery and confidence scores were also significantly lower. So when we compare ourselves to others and feel less confident than our peers, it affects how we feel about ourselves as well. This to me is really alarming. And this is what I am dedicated to trying to solve, particularly for adult age women. This is what Brave has fully gotten behind. Now, what are some of these influences, right? Like we're organizing this now as a company to start to figure in, okay, we've got to look at the pathology of this. We've got to look at like what's happening here. And okay, so there's the biological, right? There's nature, nurture, there's society, there's biological. So we've got estrogen and testosterone. These are some influences. Like, I don't know, did you feel like when you were coming into puberty that there was a huge, massive toll on your confidence? The fact that you were coming into puberty, did it change anything for you? Or did it just that time period mark a difference for you? Was itself the actual hormone? We're trying to figure all of this stuff out. Are you a perfectionist? Was it society or your teachers or your parents or your whatever you were pursuing at the time, like telling you needed to be perfect, why boys are being told they need to be brave? There's a very famous TED Talk by Reshma Sojani about teaching our girls to be brave, not perfect, which I love. But she talks a lot about the influences in this category. Are we telling our girls to be careful versus our boys to go for it? Were you told as a girl to be careful instead of to go for it? Right? There's so many different influences. These are the categories. If you were told to have the right answer instead of just trying, that's in the perfectionism bucket. Right? So you could let me know if there are any influences outside of this that you experiences, but these are some of the influences that lead to what we deal with as adult age women. There are influences that lead to men too, but we're on this conversation about what happened to my confidence as women. So here we are, right, at this mark where we are talking about this really long and slow recovery that doesn't quite get us back to where we were when we were 8 years old, feeling confident, feeling brave. Right? This is a 22 to 65-year-old trek, and it feels gritty, and it feels hard, and you don't feel the increases of your bravery and confidence on a day-to-day level, only when you zoom out and look at it over the course of nearly 40 years, right? This is where we see, oh, I've gotten more brave and confident. If you're a science person like me and you need to see stuff like this in order to be like, I need to affect change, I need to like affect change in my own life, I need to tell everybody about this, right? So how do we create and increase these surges in this? How do we make it so that we fully recover, first of all? And that like, if I tell a 22-year-old right now, like, way to go, you're like not dropping anymore, but woo, is it gonna be a long ride until you feel really great about yourself. And by the way, like this can account for surges in between, but if we're looking at this generally speaking, this feels like an uphill battle. And I am not about things being any less hard. I think hard is good. I famously like to say you deserve nothing, and work hard and earn it. I know that's going to be controversial, but that is my thing. So I want to talk about how we can get at this in some ways that you guys can take tips out of here. First of all, I'm going to tell you that what I've done in my life is that I've been a really good lacrosse player, like an excellent lacrosse player. Got to play on the USA team, on a World Cup, a silver medal and a gold medal. I was set a ton of records in college. I was a 200-pound, like locomotive force of a lacrosse player in the late 90s and early aughts. And I kicked butt. I was 210 pounds of muscle and total badass, whatever. I also went to Princeton University. And when I walk around in the world, people are like, you are confident because you are good at lacrosse and because you went to a good school. And I see them pre-read my bio and I see them, you know, when I get the microphone, it's like, oh, she must be confident because, and I know that I come off as a confident person. I am in fact confident inside. It doesn't mean I'm not always confident about everything. It doesn't mean I'm not insecure, but I am generally speaking a confident person. I have been through things. But this is what the world values, right? The world values that I went to a good school and I was a really good lacrosse player, right? I'm going to ask you in your own head, what if the world sees you as a confident person, and the world values whatever it is that our world values, you know it for your world, what does that world think you get your confidence from? If for me, it's a good school, and for me, it's being a good athlete and having had success at the top levels of that, what are your things? Feel free to put in the chat, but also it's completely fine that you're doing this work in your head. What does the world value of you and thinks that your confidence comes from? Because those two things are linked. And then I'm going to tell you two things about me, right? It gets at this lesson today. my confidence didn't come from those experiences for me. In fact, like those things bred a lot of insecurity for me because I don't know what you do, right? Schooling wise, what do I do after I get an undergraduate degree from Princeton, especially as hard earned as it felt for me? What do I do after I get a gold medal right at the age of 24 in my career? Like it bred insecurity. I didn't know what my next steps would be. And I was definitely a perfectionist because let's be real, I went to like a pretty badass school and I did pretty badass things athletically. A couple of things happened in my life that were not great, that were really hard experiences. One of them happened after my sophomore year in college when I failed out of Princeton after I had set a number of records. And in that year off, that was hard emotionally. It was hard at the time of my life. It was hard to be off the beaten track. Nothing was planned for me. My parents were like, dude, we supported you to play lacrosse in college and you got to figure this out. And Princeton was like, you got to figure this out because we'd like to protect our graduation rate. But we also want you to get your head on straight. And I'm like, I'm 19 years old. I have no idea what even any of this means. But in that whole year, which was such a struggle, I found out I was resourceful. I found out I actually love not having a path laid out in front of me, that I was a pathfinder, that I was a trailblazer. I found my entrepreneurial chops. And it's because I had nothing to work with that I found all the stuff that I thought I had nothing to work with, that I had tons of stuff inside me that I was repurposing, that I was figuring how to use. Because my supplies were so limited, I found out how fruitful what I already had or what already existed in me or around me, how fruitful that could be if I put it to different use. The second thing is that I've struggled with depression for a very long time, since I was 8 years old. And it's another story of putting together all these resources in an entire day to get to the end of the day, sometimes to get through the night, to work with what I have in order to find the joy or find the next moment for me. These things are still really hard lessons for me, particularly my struggle with depression, which is ongoing. And these are the things that allow me to know what I'm made of, what I've been through, how to leverage what seems like very little into a lot. These are the soil of my confidence. And I'm going to ask you in your head or in the comments if you want, what have you been through? What experiences have you had? What skills have you had to apply that make you know that if you encounter craziness again, or uncertainty again, or a tough situation again, that you have done it before, that you can do it, not because you know XYZ is going to apply, but because you know XYZ exists in you and you can make something of that. This is the exercise we start nearly every Brave session with. This is what we spend a ton of time on. And this, although it seems short and sweet, is the basis of how we develop our programming to build confidence. So I'm gonna ask again and just summarize it here, how to apply your experience. Think about what you have done. Think about what you have done, right? First, you might come up with the BS stuff of, I went to a good school and I was a good lacrosse player. Okay, but what have I done that was hard? And that allows you to get to what have you been through. If confidence is what you have been through, especially at the hardest times, that is the first stake in the ground of building a strong foundation to understanding personal efficacy. I have done this. I understand that I can apply what's in me to solve problems, to troubleshoot, even when I don't know the circumstances, even when I can't anticipate what's going on. This is what I want you to be thinking about today. This is what I want you to be talking about with women in your life or girls in your life, whether you're a teacher, whether you have sisters, whether you're in a book club, whether you're at work and you're going back to the water cooler. All I want you to be asking is, what does the world think you get your confidence from, and where do you actually get your confidence from? If your confidence is what you've been through. So I'd love to know, as we wrap this bad boy up, what you're most curious about at the end of this webinar. Like, what are you still curious about? I want to make sure that we are getting this content out to you and the stuff that like makes you the most curious, what you're dying to know about. And then of course, what your biggest takeaway is. Any takeaway that you have from today, what's the thing that popped out the most? It was like, oh my God, I can't unknow that. I would love for you to put that in the chat. And finally, I want to make sure that we give you the perks we promised. We are bringing you this free webinar series because we are running an 8-week online course called The Chase. This is our second time doing this. We had nearly 100 women do the first round, and the next round starts in about 2 weeks. We use instructional videos that are on demand. We use incredible worksheets. You give you journal pages for the entire 8 weeks. We do live sessions once a week. And we connect our community of people to go after the thing that you want based on digging and figuring out who you are. We're not saying you don't know who you are, but the same as today in terms of where did my confidence go? What happened to my confidence? There's a lot that's in us that either lays dormant or hidden behind the stuff we have to do every day. There's times that we're stressed, our grocery list, our kids' needs, our partners and spouses' needs, our job requirements. And we'd love for you to join us on an 8-week journey. And because you're on today, and if you're getting this today only, we are offering a 50% off code for the next 24 hours. If you use the code CONFIDENCE at morebrave.com/start chasing, you will get 50% off the price of the chase. That is today's offer only. I appreciate all of you being here for 30 minutes of your lunchtime or your afternoon time or your morning time, depending on where you're coming from, because we have Sea to Shining Sea on here. And if you have any residual questions, please let me know. We will send reminders about all remaining webinars. And if you are not signed up for all remaining webinars, but you want to be, make sure you go back to the website and get registered. You can also pop me a quick email, Krista@morebrave.com, if you just want me to plug you in to one if you're not signed up for all. I have appreciated this time to tell you all the things we're passionate about. I hope to see you on The Chase, as it's my favorite event that we offer. Toodles, all of you confident noodles.